Today on the Star Trek Critic, the Enterprise gets involved in the human trafficking trade and the trafficking of minors, and dealing with those evil capitalists. This episode, of course, is the perfect mate, where Picard loses the opportunity of a lifetime. Aww. This planet is sliding to the left really fast. Two planets have been fighting for 100 years, and the Enterprise is going to be a part of their peace treaties. Picard apologizes to the ambassador for stopping to pick up minors. I told you he was trafficking minors. The ambassador is concerned the cargo bay is secured. The bridge reports a Ferengi distress call and says I number 1. Here she turns a knob. All of them are thinking, great, having Ferengi on board is worse than the narrator using an AI voice. Strangely, the Ferengi had their shuttle on self-destruct. This will be an expensive endeavor for them. The first point is lost for a single set of doors on the turbolift. Worf should have sent a security team instead, so -1 point. And 1 point lost for not collecting the Ferengi shuttle debris. Worf is thinking, great, another actor trying out for Deep Space Nine, how many has this been, and you were crewman Dax on Star Trek VI. 1 point lost since the flagship of the Federation has no cultural advisors for this mission. 1 point lost for opening credits 6 minutes into the show. 1 point lost since the ambassador also didn't bring any staff. 1 point lost for the secure cargo bay not being secure at all. 1 point lost for no one asking what was inside this cargo. 1 point lost for stepping down in the holodeck. Here comes Par Lenore, a pushy used car salesman. This is when Picard should smack him across the ship. Look close, Patrick Stewart actually smiles. I guess he liked that joke, so -1 point since Picard would never laugh at a Ferengi's jokes. This is one of the few times that the dolphins are mentioned. 1 point lost for a visible boom in the reflection. Worf says I number 2. Then sends security to the cargo bay. He didn't know the Ferengi was there, so -1 point. 1 point lost for security waiting for Worf to arrive. 1 point lost for Riker leaving the bridge. He had no reason to go there. The version of this scene in Firefly was much better because River was naked. And out comes Famke Janssen, with spots, since she is also auditioning for Deep Space Nine. And this is Kamala. No, not that Kamala, and not this Kamala either. Kamala of course thinks Picard is Ulrich. Now it turns out part of the peace negotiations involve the trade of a humanoid. Picard and Riker are both concerned that this is human trafficking, while the ambassador assures them that it's only human trafficking if it is an unwilling participant, and Kamala assures them that she has been bred for this exchange, so it's perfectly fine. So Picard and Riker are like, okay, I guess it's not human trafficking if they all agree that it isn't human trafficking. It turns out Kamala is empathic. The ambassador asks Picard, where is your empath? Picard says she's not on the show, so -1 point. The producers said if there were 2 empaths on the set, they would fight for dominance. Briam says that's what I was hoping for. I haven't seen a good cat fight in years. What she describes is real bad puberty, where she turns into every man's dream. You should really keep her in stasis. And it turns out male metamorphs are quite common, meaning there are a bunch of men that naturally mold to what women want, and since they have no problem with human trafficking, they probably sell those men to this planet where they spend the rest of their lives, as Mistress Beata's naked live-in love slaves. And -1 point here, since these planets do not have warp drive, so the Federation getting involved breaks the Prime Directive. 1 point lost for Picard telling Riker to escort her to her quarters. She hasn't been assigned quarters. They just realized she was on the ship. Now they want to know about the left fielder. She says the first baseman was loved by the brothers, and the second baseman gives him the greatest pleasure. Then Picard says he is also an empathic metamorph, and must imprint himself upon the requirements of one man. This is getting weird. It's probably the worst idea to have these two together unsupervised. Kamala is acting like a horny teenager who has no control over her hormones, and Riker will stick it anywhere. So Kamala tries to jump him in her quarters that were never assigned to her, while Riker is thinking, damn, I thought I was the player in this show. 1 point lost for the doors knowing when he is going to leave. Then Riker leaves before he gets a home run and goes to holodeck 4 to him. That is thoroughly disgusting. I feel so sorry for those poor junior enlisted who have to mop that floor. This is the first time Beverly and Picard have breakfast together. Picard takes a drink of his tea. This is a great scene, since Gates McFadden gets to tell him how sexist this transfer is, and has the opportunity to explain it from a different perspective. Picard says, but I'm in my gray shirt, it makes me look studly. Picard says let's throw the Prime Directive out. Beverly says you already did that, and stomps out. Picard's tea is full again, so -1 point. Picard goes to Kamala's quarters to show off his sexy gray shirt. Kamala says, look, nobody will realize we aren't making eye contact with each other in this scene. Picard says I love you. Kamala says I know, Klingons aren't always violent, so she was taught watching the old Trek shows. This is really great mushy talk, so be sure to watch the actual episode and tell Paramount and CBS I sent you so I won't get copyright claims. The first baseman believes she will be disruptive to the crew. About a day and a half has passed. Brian says it's a bad idea and that all the men will be fighting for her, but really, Kamala is in heat and fighting for all the men. Data gets to be the chaperone. They actually spell chaperone an old school way here. Data tells her he has no emotions, but he is well versed in sex and can keep a secret, so maybe they should go to his quarters. As soon as they enter 10 forward, Riker has to run out and take a cold shower. Kamala looks around and notices that Starfleet is trafficking minors. She says, I thought it was illegal to traffic minors. Data says there are 7 minors here and you are a princess running from the evil queen. So you see the similarities? Kamala says, I want to act like the barmaid in a 1940s movie. Data says, yeah, I need to get you out of here. Then she growls at Worf, who start to recite Klingon love poetry. So that wasn't a good idea after all. Probably not a good idea to have these two alone in one room either, since Kamala is acting desperate to get laid. She knows information about him like the little stalker that she is. Kamala wants Picard to visit her. She says not have sex. But we all know that's her pickup line to lure him in for wild unspeakable scenes that will have to be cut. Picard turns down a sure thing, which really sucks. Does this count as a Picard maneuver? And you can see the look on his face that he was ready to go. Brian should have never gone to see the Ferengi. They say a ship is coming to pick them up. There seems to be a surplus of breaking glass tables on a starship, but glass is easy to recycle, so they would probably use it a lot. They probably have a replicator type 3D printer just for that purpose. 1 point lost for not putting the Ferengi in the brig. It will take forever for the shuttle to get to the starbase. 1 point lost for having a patient in the middle of sickbay for all to see. This is why an ambassador is supposed to have a staff, in case he ends up in the hospital. In reality, the whole Ferengi attack was set up by Kamala so Picard would have to work with her, and none of you realized that until now. She tells Picard her wild days are almost over, and she hasn't been out of stasis for that long, just a couple of days. One point lost for Picard doing this himself. The ship has a crew of 1,000, many of which are specifically trained in public affairs with other cultures. This is Creosian for bottoms up. Is this a holographic musical instrument? This is a good conversation between them. Jean-Luc gets so turned on by her he has to stand up and perform the Picard maneuver. Kamala was taken from her mother when she was 4. That doesn't sound like human trafficking at all. In the foreground is an ancient holographic scroll, so -1 point for not having a real scroll. In the background, a barrel full of holographic alcohol to get trashed on after the ceremony. Picard finds her unavailable. In reality, Kamala has been bred in captivity her entire life for this one event, and falls in love with the first single male she comes into contact with. Kamala sits down in a holographic chair. Chancellor Ulrich looks like he just came off the Dune set. He is only interested in trade agreements. The stars are moving. Now they are not so -1 point. Arik is correct, they are quite different. Arik asks about Kamala but says he is more interested in the trade agreements. And Picard is thinking, oh, you must be gay. Poor Picard has to tell Kamala how exciting her new husband is. This is a very sad scene. She came out of puberty and is genetically exactly what Captain Picard wants in a woman. If Picard stayed on the bridge where he is supposed to be, and has one of his public relations teams do their job, instead, this would have never happened. She asks, am I one of the most unique life forms you have ever met? Picard is thinking, yes, that's called lying for sex. But it is too late. Is this gesture symbolic of him getting some head? The next morning, Picard wakes up in Beverly's room. Wow, there must be some wild deleted scenes somewhere. Did Picard ever use this phrase also? Then he asks if he can take off his uniform. Beverly is like, oh hell yeah, I've been waiting 5 years for this moment. But Picard just wants to get into girl talk. And Beverly is thinking, shit, I thought we were going to have sex, but now I have to hear all his girl problems I warned him about. Here comes another scene involving a mirror and Picard is thinking, rats, I thought this was going to be a Betazoid wedding. Here is another sad scene. Kamala admits she has imprinted on Picard like a baby duck to a mother duck. But this whole arrangement is to end a 100-year-long war that actually started with 2 men fighting over 1 woman who is just like her. So if they take off in the captain's yacht, they risk the war starting all over again. And another point is lost here. If this is such an important ceremony between 2 warring planets, why are there no reporters or cameras for everyone to see? Probably because this is the most stomach-turning kiss that no one on either planet wants to see. Picard just wants to throw up. 1 point lost for this being a Talarian ship. The ambassador confides he is 200 years old, and his Viagra needs Viagra. How did Picard manage to control himself? Picard wishes the ambassador a safe trip, and you can tell in the ambassador's look right here that he knows Picard had a rough time. And here you can tell Picard is secretly thinking of sneaking Kamala out of her castle, because we all know Alric won't even notice. This is the last time we see April Grace. She has over 100 screen credits including AI and The Hunger Games, and will be back on DS9 and Picard. For some reason the three minors were paid using the adult pay scale. Michael Snyder played the lead on Equus. He only has a few screen credits but was on Star Trek 4 and 6, and Next General. Max Grodenchik used this opportunity to get the role of Rom on DS9. He is also a great baseball player. He was also on The Rocketeer and Apollo 13. The late Mickey Cottrell left us last year. He spent more time behind the camera as a publicist, and he will be back on Voyager. Tim O'Connor left us at the age of 90. He left his mark on Peyton Place, Buck Rogers, and 100 other shows. Famke Janssen was born in the Netherlands and has done a lot of modeling. She decided to give the spotty role to Terry Farrell and chose a different role with 75 screen credits, including the X-Men, Nip Tuck, and Hemlock Grove. The Perfect Mate, where Picard's opportunity of a lifetime gets ripped away from him, gets a score of 74.
Yes!
Be sure to leave comments below, click that like button, the share button, and that subscribe button, and come back next week for Imaginary Friend.